everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my latest recent reads video where I'll be discussing all the books that I read in the last 2 weeks of April. Now you might be asking yourself, why is Rachel in this setup instead of her normal setup? And that is because we are doing a get ready with me style wrap up where I will be doing my full face of makeup while talking about these books. Clearly I'm in a very weird mood right now. I had a nap a couple hours ago and so now I just have a lot of energy. So here we are. As you can see, I have Powerless by Elsie Silver propped up over here. So that is the first book we will be talking about. And this is book 3 in her Chestnut Springs series. I was very excited to get to this book because I gave both Flawless and Heartless 5 stars, and I was also buddy reading this with Victoria and Ava. I will absolutely link their channels down in the description below. But this is a road trip, friends to lovers romance between Sloane and Jasper. I feel like I don't really need to give much more setup than that. I feel like you kind of just need to read the first 2 books to really get the vibe of this series as a whole and to get a vibe of like who these 2 characters are. And I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars just like I did with Flawless and Heartless, but upon further reflection, you know, since I've read it, I definitely feel like this is the weakest book of the series. And something that I was thinking about while reading this book is that I feel that most authors in general, or I guess we'll talk about romance authors specifically, most romance authors specifically write certain tropes really well, like that's their trope, you know? And I'm not convinced that friends to lovers is Elsie Silver's trope. I feel like she writes more like opposites attract and dislike to love a lot better, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, not every author writes every type of romance well, you know? I mean, I still definitely enjoyed this. I do want to point out that Jasper, our hero, he is most definitely a Cinedom hero. I recently did a recommendations video about that type of romance hero, and now I'm like a little bit mad at myself that I didn't wait to make that video until after I read this book, but that just means I'll have to make a part 2 and that's fine. But if you don't know, or if you didn't watch that video, a Cinedom is a type of hero who is very sweet in the streets, might be very shy. I also consider Cinedoms to maybe have like some himbo energy. Like there's different kinds of Cinedoms, you know? So they're one way in the streets and then they are a certified freak in the sheets. Specifically because they are a dom, they tell their partner what to do in the bedroom and they definitely take charge, and that's what Jasper does, and we love to see that. I also really enjoyed the audiobook for this one. The narrators were CJ Bloom, who I recently had the amazing privilege of interviewing her and Maxine Mitchell on Jess's channel, so I'm gonna link that live show down in the description below. That was such an amazing interview. Oh my goodness, like so funny, and they are both just so talented, and it was just so much fun. But Teddy Hamilton is also the male narrator for this audiobook, and I mean, we all know Teddy Hamilton's talent at this point. If you listen to romance audiobooks, chances are you've listened to an audiobook that Teddy Hamilton has narrated, and he was wonderful in this. I thought he was perfectly cast as Jasper. So yeah, really enjoyed this. Very excited for book 4 of this series, which is going to be Reckless. That is going to be Winter and Theo's romance. If you need a reminder, Winter is Summer's estranged sister. Summer was the heroine from book 1, and then Theo is like a colleague slash friend of Rhett, who is the hero from book 1. And yeah, so excited for that for sure. So let's move on and talk about, oh, I read Sweat and Soap Volume 6. If you know me at all, you should know that I am one of the biggest fans that ever was of Sweat and Soap. This is a romance slice of life manga series, and we are following Asako and Notori. And in the first few volumes, they've fallen in love with each other. And now, there are 11 volumes total in this series, by the way. But now we are following their day-to-day life as slice of life would suggest, but just kind of like different milestones in their relationship. So this volume in particular really focused on how they have finally moved in together, they leased an apartment together, and just how they're adjusting to that, because they've never lived with a romantic partner before. I think both of them have either only lived by themselves or lived with their families. So this is definitely quite the adjustment for them. And I know that sounds so mundane and so boring. I feel like every time I explain one of these volumes, I feel like I'm boring you guys to tears, but you just need to trust me and try out this series. This is literally one of the most adorable and sweet romances. I usually end up tearing up at some point while reading one of these volumes. It's just such an incredible romance, such amazing communication, by the way. So if you're someone that is just over the miscommunication trope, then you need to try out volume 1 and thank me later for sure, because yeah, the communication is just next level, and I could just go on and on and on and on about how amazing I think this couple is. Actually, a bit of a fun fact for you all is that I recently had a really exciting and honestly just insane audition in New York this past weekend. One of my very best friends in the whole wide world and I took this trip together kind of impulsively, not gonna lie. And we both auditioned for a show. All I'm gonna say is that this is a show that I have wanted to be a part of since I was 12 years old, and I am now 30. So if this were to actually happen for me, like that would honestly truly just be like the most insane thing ever. So I don't want to give too many details because I just like, I don't know, I don't want to jinx it, but yeah, just send me positive vibes that like this could happen, you know, because I don't know, like it's definitely a 1 in a billion shot, but crazier things have happened for sure. So next book I want to talk about is Puck Me Secretly. I was turned on to this hockey romance series because I had seen so many people rave and rave and rave and rave specifically about book 2, which is Home Game. And so I knew that I wanted to just go ahead and start with book 1. And boy, this book is so dramatic. It is straight up a soap opera. I'm very curious to see if the rest of the series is going to be as dramatic. Like, is that Odette Stone's writing style? Like, she is here for the drama and the tea, or was it just this book for some reason? I didn't hate that. I mean, clearly I love drama, I'm a performer, but I just like wasn't quite expecting the level of dramatics that this book serves. But this is about Max and Rory, and their meet cute is something else because they are both flying to Vancouver. They are on the same flight sitting next to each other. Rory is flying there to shadow her father, who is the owner for the Vancouver Wolves, which is the hockey team that this series centers around. And then Max is flying there to be a new player on the team, but Rory doesn't know who he is. And so they're on this plane together, and the plane like straight up crashes. Definitely don't read this book if you are on a plane or if you have any trauma surrounding planes, because that scene feels very real for sure. But yeah, because their plane crashes, they end up staying in a hotel, and they have this like crazy one-night stand situation, and then they go their separate ways. And so obviously they don't think they'll ever see each other again, but lo and behold, when Rory shows up for her first day of work, who is there but Max? Because of course, like I said, he's on the team that she is eventually going to be managing. That's what her father wants for her. And so yeah, what follows is their romance. Like I said, it's just very dramatic. I do want to point out that there's some drama involving another woman, but, and I know that's not a lot of people's favorite thing, but I will say that drama dissipates towards the end of the book. But there is other drama, and there's even some suspense towards the end. Like I said, this is a soap opera. This book goes there, but I just really enjoyed their romance. I flew through this book in a day, which is unheard of for me nowadays because I'm a lot more busy with work than I used to be. So when I do finish like a full-length novel in a day, that is definitely noteworthy for me. So I gave this 4 stars, would definitely recommend it, and I'm really looking forward to reading book 2 very, very soon. I'll definitely be reading it at some point this month. By the way, I found the audiobooks for this series on Hoopla, and this is on KU. Powerless is also on KU as well. So the next 2 books I'm going to be talking about are both first books in a series that, because of the somewhat mixed reviews, I thought I was never going to read these books, but recently I just decided to give these books a try anyway, and joke's on me, I ended up loving both of these books and giving them 5 stars. So the first one is Desperate Measures by Katie Roberts. This is book 1 in her Wicked Villain series. If you don't know anything about this series, these are Disney movie retellings where the villain gets the girl, essentially. And so this one centers around Jasmine and Jafar, but it's not the Jasmine and Jafar you know. This definitely takes place in a different world. There's no magic or anything. At the beginning of the book, Jafar is Jasmine's father's right-hand man, and he ends up staging a coup and killing Jasmine's father, and it becomes a captor-captive situation, kind of, but Jasmine is willing to go with him. So is it captor-captive? You know, and what had scared me about this book at first, and the reason why I put off reading it for as long as I did, was that I knew that there was some CNC kink or consensual non-consent going on, and I was like, ooh, is that gonna be for me? But let me just tell you, it's not extreme in this book. Like, it's light CNC. I feel like these romances, you know, this series is definitely a dark romance series, but I feel like this is a good series to start with if you're dipping your toe into dark romance. And what I mean by that is that I feel there are other dark romances that really go there with the darker themes and like how extreme the kinks are and things like this, where whereas this series, like I said, it's like a lighter version of that. So definitely don't be scared of this book if you think CNC does not appeal to you, because I think that Katie Roberts does it really well here, and it's very clear that Jasmine wants what Jafar is doing to her and with her, and vice versa, you know? So yeah, this was a really fun time. You know, the Jasmine Jafar pairing wasn't something that necessarily appealed to me at first, and I think that's another reason why I stayed away from this book for a while. But I mean, these versions of Jasmine and Jafar are just so delicious and delectable. And I have to say, the ending of this was really great. I did not expect the direction that this book and this story goes in. And the other book that I tried and ended up loving was Twisted Love by Anna Huang. So this is book 1 in her Twisted series. I have read Twisted Games and Twisted Hate. Twisted Games I gave 4 stars, and then Twisted Hate I gave 5 stars. I freaking loved that book. I read that last year around the time that it came out. But this one is Alex and Ava's story. And so this is kind of a classic grumpy sunshine, grumpy cold hero, sunshiny heroine, billionaire romance. And it's also a brother's best friend romance, given that Alex is best friends with Ava's brother. And Ava's brother ends up being the hero of Twisted Hate. So I really loved this. I really liked Ava's character. I found her to be very endearing. Yeah, I just like didn't expect a lot out of this book, because I feel like so many of my friends were giving this like 3.5 stars, like very mixed reviews. around the time that it came out, but I'm really glad that I gave this a try. Also, Aiden Snow is the male narrator for this book, and he's wonderful. He's just a wonderful narrator, and I think that he is a perfect fit for Alex's character. Also, I have to note that there is a pretty epic grovel in this book, and anytime I read a really great grovel, I gotta mention it to you guys, because it doesn't happen all that often, and when it does, it's noteworthy, you know, and I love a good grovel. Next up, we have Mogul by Joanna Shupe. This is the third and final book in her Knickerbocker Club series, which this is one of the first series that she ever published. This was actually with a different publisher. She now publishes with Avon. This was with like a smaller historical romance publisher. And I have to say, I have truly been loving this series so far. I gave Tycoon, which is like a prequel novella, 4 stars, and then I gave both Magnate and Baron 5 stars. And honestly, those are some of my absolute favorite Joanna Shupe books. So if you are someone like me who was kind of avoiding the series simply because it's one of Joanna Shupe's earlier works, I would highly recommend giving this series a chance anyway. But this is the third and final book. Like I said, this one is a really fun premise because it's a second chance romance. It's also a hate to love romance where we have Lillian and Calvin, and we see in the prologue of the book that they had eloped and gotten married. By the way, if you don't know, Joanna Shupe writes Gilded Age romances in New York typically, though she does have a series that takes place in the Regency era. But all of her other books take place in, like I said, the Gilded Age in New York City. So they eloped and got married, but Calvin is a self-made man. At the time that they eloped, he wasn't self-made yet. He was definitely poor, whereas Lillian's father is very wealthy. He has mines, I think. And so Lillian's father steps into the situation and he's like, y'all are gonna get an annulment. Okay, thanks, bye. And at first Calvin absolutely refuses, but then Lillian's father blackmails him into signing the annulment papers. And so he leaves Lillian's life with no explanation, basically. And so now Lillian hates Calvin's guts, and for very good reason, I would say. So now it is 4 years later since the annulment happened, and Lillian desperately needs Calvin's help to find her brother. She has no idea where he is, and now Calvin is a self-made man. He runs like a ton of newspapers, and so she knows that he can get information and help her find her brother. And so I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I did love the, you know, second chance, hate to love romance, plenty of angst, definitely a healthy dose of miscommunication as well. So be aware of that before going into this. But the reason why I didn't give this 5 stars is there is a non-romance plot that involves the Chinese Exclusion Act, which I really appreciated that plot and how, you know, Joanna Shupe definitely did her research, how, you know, she's teaching us a bit of history with this plot. But I do think that that plot took over the spotlight sometimes from the romance. So for that reason, I didn't love this quite as much as the first couple books in this series, but I still definitely enjoyed it. And, you know, it's Joanna Shupe, so she definitely serves the steamy times and the spice, you know. So for that reason too, of course, I really enjoyed this. Next up, we have Right Man, Right Time by Megan Quinn. So I have read one book by Megan Quinn before. I read the Lineup, which is book 3 in her Brentwood Boys series. That is her baseball romance series. And I have been meaning to pick up another book by Megan Quinn since then, but I just haven't for some reason. Megan Quinn, I will say, you know, she has a very unique vibe to her. Her books are definitely, you know, rom-coms. They're definitely quirky, over the top at times. You know, they just have like a unique feel. And so I've definitely been meaning to try another one of her books. But then I saw Tori from Novel Life just raving and raving and raving about this book. And so I decided to pick this one up kind of on a whim. The audiobook is duet narration, which means that The female narrator reads all of the dialogue from female characters and the opposite for the male narrator, which I really love duet narration. Audiobooks, I just feel like they are just that much more immersive, and you know, you can tell that the production value is there. So first of all, I do have to point out, like, this audiobook truly was next level. It was really, really great. And I have to say, Jason Clark in particular, the male narrator, he was absolutely spectacular. That man's voice has range, and I recently found out that he also sings, and there are some audiobooks out there where you can hear him sing. So I'm definitely gonna be on the lookout for those. But basic plot, it's fake dating. It's also age gap. We have Ollie, who's 21 years old. She is currently in an internship for college. She's studying journalism. And then we have Silas, who is a hockey player. We see in the prologue that Silas is in a very serious relationship with his high school sweetheart. He's even planning on proposing to her. He comes home to find out that his girlfriend is cheating not only with one person, but with two people at the same time. So yikes. And so then it's now in present day. Ollie, our heroine, is at a bar with some friends of hers when one of her rivals shows up and is just being an asshole to her. And so Ollie makes up that she has a boyfriend when she doesn't, and she decides to go up to, like, the first man she sees in the bar and kiss him and pretend to be his girlfriend. And so that, my friends, is their meet cute, and things go on from there. Something I know is pretty common for Megan Quinn's books in general, her audiobooks are long. This audiobook was almost 14 hours. What contemporary romance needs to be 14 hours if it's not like Mariana Zapata or something, you know? I just feel like there's a certain kind of romance novel that needs to be that long, but it's not a rom-com. Rom-coms don't need to be that long, in my opinion. All right, we are done with the makeup. What do we think? So yeah, to continue with my review, I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I think the audiobook narration went a long way in terms of why I enjoyed this book so much. I liked this romance, really liked Silas's character. I found Ollie's character to be very annoying, especially in the first half. I found her to be really freaking immature. She's supposed to be 21 years old, and I don't know a 21-year-old grown woman who is a senior in college who calls people fart face. Can we grow up? Can we not act like a 14-year-old? Maybe even younger than a 14-year-old? But there were a lot of other things that she would say and do that I was like, please, can we grow up? Please, oh, I'm begging you. I am begging you at this point, you know? But definitely in the second half, I feel like she grew up a lot. And so definitely by the end, I wasn't quite as annoyed by her. Oh, great steamy scenes, by the way. Megan Quinn, you wrote those steamy scenes. They were very, very good. So yeah, if you're looking for a book with this vibe, I definitely would recommend the audiobook. I do want to quickly mention Crybaby by Marina Vivancos. This is a novella that I read for the latest round of Novellathon that I did. I co-hosted this with Tiffany, Samantha, and Ava. And this was our group pick for the readathon. So this is an MM Friends to Lovers romance between Jason and Sasha, who is originally from Russia. And so this was just really sweet and sexy. There was really wonderful banter between these two main characters. This book definitely made me chuckle to myself. It was great. It was wonderful. I definitely want to read more from Marina Vivancos in the future. And then I do want to quickly mention Unclaimed by Courtney Milan. So this was our April book club pick for the Blushing Blue Stocking Society, which, if you don't know, this is a historical romance book club that I run with my really great friend Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. So we just recently did a live show discussion for this book. I will have that linked down in the description below. And what kind of sucks about that live show is that, I mean, I loved the live show. I thought it came out really great, but I didn't quite finish the book in time for the discussion, and I really wish that I had. So that's why I'm still mentioning the book in this wrap up. But this is about Jessica and Mark. This is book 2 in the Turner series. We read book 1, which is Unveiled, in March, and we both really loved it. So we had very high expectations going into this book, because I know a lot of my friends who have read this book absolutely adore this book and love it even more than Unveiled. So I had very high expectations. I also had high expectations because this has some tropes that I really enjoy. We have a virgin hero and we have a courtesan heroine. So obviously the heroine is a lot more experienced than the hero. And what's really interesting about the story is that Mark is kind of a celebrity. He wrote this book about chastity, and people have really hooked on to this book and its ideas. And so he like can't go anywhere without being noticed and without people just like fawning over him. Whereas we have Jessica, like I said, she's a courtesan, and she makes this deal with this man who was her protector in the past. He really wants someone to ruin Mark. And so the perfect way to do that is to have a courtesan seduce him, right? And so at first, Jessica is just trying to seduce him for this deal to get some money, right? But of course she ends up falling for him and vice versa. And I ended up really enjoying this. I gave it 4 stars. I will say the first half to me was a bit boring. I wish that it would have been more interesting, because I totally would have given this 5 stars, but just not much was happening plot-wise in the first half, and yeah. But I did really like there were a lot of discussions surrounding the idea of chastity, and I love that Mark's idea behind trying to get men to be abstinent is really for the benefit of women. There, you know, the whole idea of when a woman is ruined or when she's known as a fallen woman, it's because a man pushed her to fall, in a sense. That's how Mark describes it. And so I just really liked that he wrote this whole book not to be like high and mighty and holier than thou, but truly to protect women in this, you know, pretty oppressive society, you know, and in this time period, right? And I also really liked the discussion surrounding being a courtesan, being a sex worker, especially in Jessica's inner monologue, the way that she would talk about this life that she's been leading. And I feel like it was very unique. I haven't read discussions quite like this in a romance novel before, so I really appreciated that. Also, I have to say, something to entice you to read this book is that there is an amazing duel going on towards the end, and I don't want to give any more details than that, but when that scene happened, I was dying. It was so iconic and so amazing. But if you are curious, our May book club pick for the Blushing Blue Stocking Society is going to be A Rogue's Rules for Seduction by Eva Lee. This is her newest release. This just came out on April 25th. I have been chomping at the bit to read this book. This is the 3rd book in her Last Chance Scoundrels series. We are finally getting Dom and Willa's story, and I'm so freaking pumped because their romance has been featured since book 1, and like, yeah, I'm dying. So this live show is going to be Friday, May 26th at 8 p.m. Central Time on my channel. So yeah, that is going to be it for my recent reads. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you have been reading any books lately that you've been absolutely loving. As usual with these wrap-ups, at least lately, I don't talk about every single book that I read. I just talk about the noteworthy ones. So if you want to see at least like the star rating of every single book that I read, definitely be sure to follow me on Goodreads. And with that being said, I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!